welcome to What's Going On. I'm your host, Angela Bozorth. Lights out. I can take care of that. Tonight is the night of All Hallows Eve, the night where anything is possible. And you're going to see that right on the show. So stay tuned and make sure you watch, if you dare.
For those dealing with the struggles of caring for a loved one, we hear you. Visit aarp.org/caregiving for advice and support.
And there you have it, October 13th, 2012, the day the undead took over Melbourne, Florida. Welcome back. As we're talking about the night of ghosts and ghouls and all other things Halloween, we're also talking about zombies. And we've seen what happened on October 13th in downtown Melbourne. And I'm also lucky enough to have a local writer from the area, Melanie Karzak. By day, she is a very successful communications professor at BCC, and she moonlights as a writer, and you have just released your first book called The Harvesting, which is an original saga about zombies.
That's right, yes.
So welcome so much, Melanie.
Thank you so much.
So of all the things that are in the supernatural pantheon that we could talk about, why do you think that zombies have caught on in the last few years? And seems like almost like a worldwide craze, because throughout the month of October, there are zombie walks throughout the world now. So why do you think zombies now?
Yeah, I feel like zombies are becoming so popular these days because they really are representing a great feeling of dissatisfaction, I think, that we feel as an American culture, and then I think it's also something that we feel worldwide. We are a culture that consumes. We don't know where our food comes from. We don't know where the clothes we wear come from. The cars we drive. It's all about consumption. And I do think that zombies are representative of a kind of feeling of societal malaise or dissatisfaction or disconnect we have, not only from our environment as we kind of plow through our environment every day, but also a disconnect from one another as we see each other visually, or virtually, I should say, on the internet and things like this, that we're really disconnected from each other. And so I think zombies as creatures that literally consume through the environment, they really symbolize our feelings of dissatisfaction with the world and the way that we are negotiating our world these days.
And now, I just thought of a question that as not only a communications professor, but also someone that is an expert on pop culture as well, I think. For instance, Frankenstein, we talked about before we began taping. Mary Shelley wrote that actually born out of the experiences of Europe in the early 1800s. Bram Stoker created Dracula out of the repression of the Victorian era. So they were a social commentary. So they kind of set a lot of the standard, mixing, I guess, fact with fiction on both, those cases. Witches have been around, obviously, thousands of years, fact with fiction. My first remembrance of zombies was George Romero's, I think, Night of the Living Dead, kind of a B movie, if you will.
Right.
So where did zombies originate in the lore? Or in history, I guess.
Well, even from the earliest records, if you look at one of the earliest narratives that we have, which is the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is, 3000 BCE or older, depending on the story, we have the goddess Ishtar threatening to raise up the dead to fill the streets and destroy the living. So the notion of the living dead has been with us for a long time. And some people think that zombieism has to do with our fears of cannibalism and times where we have been cannibals in our history. Of course, then we have, voodoo traditions and things like that. In terms of a piece of literature, there's not really a literary canon that talks about zombieism. And really, Ramiro's stories are, as part of pop culture, right? That's really what's setting the stage, and reflected, Ramiro's stories reflected, the concerns of the 70s and 80s and the Me generation and that sort of thing. And so this generation is sort of taking a new spin on that to reflect the issues that we have today.
Now, interestingly, some people have, the undead, and there's I guess, a supernatural undertone to the story. Others are more scientific based. For instance, when the Melbourne area, when they had their zombie walk, there were the hunters, and a lot of times they were biohazard suits. So, and a lot of the movies reflect both sides of it. Some may have some type of more of a supernatural feel. Others are more almost more science fiction. So when you began writing The Harvesting and developing the story, how did you kind of see the story?
Well, I think there are a couple, as you're saying, there are a couple of ways to handle like what happens that causes the great zombie apocalypse. And it's either something has happened environmental, or there's some great magician somewhere raising the undead. And I felt that it was important to talk in the story about really these environmental conditions that we are all a little bit fearful of. And so in the first book of The Harvesting, which is a planned trilogy, we don't really learn exactly what causes it, but it does seem to be something that is environmental. And I think that that's really what our fear is, right? What's in our environment? And if we mixed too many genetically modified foods with acid rain and really bad hairspray, what might happen?
Yes.
So that I made the choice then to make it at least seem in the first book that it seems like it's something from the environment.
And so your first book, The Harvesting. So tell us a little bit about how long it took, and a little bit about your plot.
Okay.
So
Sure.
we can get people interested here.
Oh, sure. Well, in terms of coming up with the idea for the story, I sort of started thinking about this. My professor brain was working really hard on why intellectually, is this topic so popular today? And so I started thinking about it in that way. And the more and more I thought about it, it is a really interesting story. And then I sort of conceived of the protagonist. She sort of came to me, I guess, is the way, writers always sound weird when they talk about their characters, but she sort of came to me, and had a story that she wanted to be told. And my main character's name is Layla, and she's a small town girl who has had a successful life outside of her small town, but she has back home her Russian Grandma Petrovich, who is the town's medium. And Grandma kind of foresees that bad things are about to unfold and calls Layla and says, "You need to come home." But doesn't say why, just in a typical kind of grandma style. You need to come home. You just need to come home. And then over the course of the next few days, a sort of pandemic kind of thing starts to unfold across the country, and then will of course hit the small town that they live in. Now Layla, gets some of her backstory, that she's been a little bit ostracized much of her life because of the fact that her grandma's a psychic and this sort of thing. But she ends up being sort of the savior and the protector of the people of the small town, and organizes them and helps protect them, and comes up with ideas of ways to keep the town safe and things like this. And so the story starts out with Layla and how she really helps to protect the people of her small town. Now later the story unfolds, and more supernatural elements seem to come into play, but that's how it starts.
So hopefully that will be like a good teaser to get people interested. That of course around Halloween time, people are usually more open to all things supernatural, and this is the beginning of a trilogy. So how do people get copies of The Harvesting?
The Harvesting is available on Amazon.com. You can get a copy like she's holding here, or it's also available on Kindle. It can be ordered through Barnes & Noble. So those are the best ways to find it.
Awesome. Well, Melanie Karzak, thank you so much for coming in. Wish you all the success for your first book, The Harvesting.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. We've got more scary surprises here on What's Going On.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jen Psychowski. Everyone knows for people to stay healthy, they have to eat right and stay active. As a veterinarian, I worry about this for our patients every day. Please join us on December 2nd at 8 a.m. for the 3rd annual Bayfront 5K9 Fun Run and Walk. The proceeds benefit the homeless pets of Brevard County animal shelters. So grab your running buddy and move those paws in support of our mission. Fighting pet obesity, saving homeless pets!
Do ghosts really exist? I'll never tell. But supposedly one of the most haunted places on the East Coast is right here in Brevard County. It's Ashley's Restaurant on US 1 in Rockledge, supposedly haunted by a trio of ghosts, including one of a 19-year-old girl who was brutally murdered in 1934. Her name was Ethel Allen. And this year, two ladies by the name of Gloria Falco and Gail Sheldon wrote a book called Ethel Allen's Date with the Devil. In the book, they explore fact and fiction. So they're going to be telling you more about Ethel Allen's story right now.
For me, when I went to the Georgiana cemetery and saw a slab that just had the name Ethel Allen and the date showing that this young woman had died at 19, I really wanted to learn more about her death. And luckily, I connected with Gail, who had already investigated through Ashley's part of Ethel's death.
Yes, I was really glad that I was chosen to do the investigation. Before we even went there and did the paranormal investigation, it gave me a lot of insight on Ethel Allen. I had never heard about Ethel, even though I was raised here, and I was really thankful that Ashley's kept the story alive. Or I would have never heard of her, I don't think. There really wasn't a lot of information in the newspapers, or, you would think that with an unsolved murder, it would be, in the newspapers a lot more than just for a couple of weeks.
And a horrific murder. She wasn't just killed, she was probably tortured. And what I had always heard, having lived here since 1994, was that Ashley's was haunted by 3 different ghosts, one of which was a young woman who might have had a tattoo, who also bothered people, ladies in the ladies' room. And I remember hearing about that, but I never really felt that there was anything there. You did an investigation there, didn't you, Gail? Did you feel her?
Yeah, well, I actually did get to contact Ethel Allen, but it was never in the bathroom, and it was a really good contact that I had with her, and it lingered and stayed in my mind, and I thought, I really need to look further into this than just that little couple of day investigation. I would just really like to know more about this woman and how she died and why was she forgotten. She was only 19 years old. She was, just a young woman.
And I joined the paranormal ghost hunters in Melbourne after that investigation, and we connected. Gail had already done a lot of research and investigation into this as far as looking for records. You were looking through the census, trying to find her name. So we decided to combine regular investigative techniques along with some paranormal investigation. Gail's expert with the dowsing rods, and I was using a little ghost box or a voice-activated contact. We really felt like we had made contact with Ethel, and we also felt that Ethel guided us through this investigation. When you went to Ashley's, because I know you did that investigation when I wasn't part of the group, you did communicate with Ethel, right? And she told
Yes.
you.
I was upstairs, and I had heard that Ethel was killed under the stairs. So I was dowsing, and I said, Ethel Allen, can you show me where you were killed? And immediately, I got a very strong pull towards the stairway. I walked down the stairs, and assuming that it was going to make me go right around the stairs, and out the front door she took me, right out to the street, and my dowsing rods pointed towards Coco, and I was really kind of surprised. then I looked down and I saw I was standing on a manhole, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm just dowsing for water again. But I really did have a strong feeling that she pulled me out there. I had never had one for water like that before, so it was very intense.
And was that when she pulled you through the cemetery toward where her dump site was, or?
Right, I started in Cocoa, and started where she was last seen at, which was the fruit factory. And I came down the street. She had me come down the street, and right behind what is now Norman's Raw Bar, she said that she was murdered back there. And it was an empty lot, and I had no idea, what kind of building could have been there or whatever existed there. So I was a little perplexed. And then I asked her from that point if she could show me where her body was dumped. And again, she indicated we drove quite a distance to her actual dump site, which we later verified.
That was confirmed.
Right.
And what did you find out about the spot where she said she was murdered?
Well, we interviewed the owner of the orange grove, his son, and he said that at one time the garage for the orange grove, where they worked on all the big orange picking trucks and everything, was right there at that spot.
So there could have been a spot there with a big burn barrel. Her body was not just mutilated, but it was also burned before she was dumped. And that would have been an ideal spot to destroy her body if someone had murdered her.
He could have spent hours torturing her. It was the middle of the night, and I'm sure that the orange workers weren't at work, and he had full access to both the warehouse and where they, worked on the cars and the trucks.
And in that spot, that's where we got a lot of different indications that Ethel was really communicating with us, because in front of Norman's Raw Bar, there's, on one of the windows, there is the painting of a frog in a pond. And using the little ghost box, we would get the word frog. We had the word elephant, and we looked over, and when we got that word, there was an elephant. Even though at that time we thought it was the man that was working in the fruit packing, Ethel never really indicated that it was just him. She had been involved with somebody else, a married man.
Right.
And he was someone who was very flashy, had a beautiful car, and was throwing money around, and he disappeared right after she died. So there was a lot of thought in the area that he was the one who had murdered her. However, there were a lot of questions about whether or not he could have done that, because he went on a business trip and he returned the day that her body was found, and then he took off. He disappeared.
Right. And the night watchman was never ever interviewed again, as far as we know. There was no more information. As soon as they had the flashy man, and they got his story, because he was a career criminal as a thief, they thought that he was the murderer, and the investigation stopped at that point.
It was easy to pin it on him. Now,
Right.
he had a very interesting history. He was known as the Hollywood burglar, and he had many, there were actually some of those flashy magazines written about him. We were very lucky in that Gail connected with the original sheriff's grandson, and the grandson had all the clippings that his grandfather had saved from this murder. There were a couple of pulp magazines written about the death of Ethel Allen, and in them they were indicating that it was this flashy guy who went to Hollywood and then was breaking into all these places with movie stars and stealing jewels, and later became imprisoned,
Right.
died in prison, but not before they really they didn't technically charge him with this crime.
Right.
But they did feel that they had solved Ethel Allen's murder by pinning it on this man.
Right. So he was never actually. Her murder is unsolved, and there's nobody that has ever paid. And we felt the sadness and the
Absolutely.
feelings that she actually gave us. She made us feel that she needed some vindication. She needed her story told, that she wasn't just a prostitute. She wasn't a loose woman. She was a 19-year-old woman who was a good time girl.
A young woman who had to work a couple of jobs, and yes, she did have a tattoo, which might have been an unusual thing for a young woman. However, what we felt in dealing with this case was really more of a sense of sadness than any sort of odd, ghostly feeling.
Right.
She was just a very young woman who no one had taken care of, who was thrown away, and who needed her story told. And that is why we were really happy to work with this book.
Welcome back to What's Going On special Halloween show, and I am very lucky to have an expert on the subject of Halloween. Her name is Dickie Jo Mullen, and she is a paranormal investigator, astrologer, and Wiccan practitioner. Welcome so much, Dickie Jo.
Thank you, Angela. It's a pleasure to be here. Happy Halloween.
Thank you, and happy Halloween to you as well. And I think it is also called, if I'm not mistaken, All Hallows Eve.
All Hallows Eve and Samhain, which is an old Celtic word meaning summer's end. It's actually one of the 8 spiritual holidays in the Wiccan calendar. It's the old Celtic New Year, and it represents a time when the spirit world is closer to us. And I feel the spirit entities are friendly, but all of the Halloween costumes and celebrations have an older, deeper religious or spiritual application, and that this is a time when the veil to the other side is thinnest, and we can sense those loved ones who have passed away, and they may come back to visit. We can often have dreams or special connections near this time of year with another dimension.
Now, of course, Halloween is the most sacred of holidays for Wiccans or pagans. And what is the term? Are they interchangeable, or is there a little bit of a difference between pagan and Wiccan?
Well, pagan really means country dweller, and Wiccan means to bend, meaning to be flexible and to bend time, energy, effort. They've become interchangeable. And pagan and Wiccan are terms that represent a belief system outside the conventional religious belief system, but not really out of harmony with it. All Wiccans are pagan, but not all pagans are Wiccan, because there are other types of religions that the country dweller means those that were outside of the early church. And there have been subcultures of people around the world that have stayed outside of conventional religion, and it's to honor energy, spirituality, in a little bit of a different manner. There are ceremonies, there are specific holidays, and they mirror the familiar Christian calendar and are not out of harmony with it or hostile to it, but it's kind of like another approach to honoring our lives and giving thanks for all that we have.
And many people, when they hear the term witch or witchcraft, they feel it is synonymous with devil worshiping. So if you could clarify.
It's a shame that they don't,
Right.
that's, my book, The Witch's Almanac, which is available at Creative Energy locally, is a nice guide for those that are more interested. But the witches are a very gentle group. They honor nature, they honor each other, they focus on healing, the positive direction of energy. People that worship demonic forces are there. There are groups that do that. And it is a shame that it's synonymous with witchcraft. I think those old prejudices are falling by the wayside more and more. Basically, you can tell the difference. Anyone who practices the old religion or witchcraft focuses on healing, on helping themselves. If anyone is more focused on sending ill will or destructive energies toward others, then it would become the other force. The symbol of the pentagram, if we can see it, or pentacle, if it's three-dimensional, is a figure of the human body with the head and the arms and the legs extended. This is a symbol we see in nature. If you cut an apple open, you'll see a pentagram there inside, a five-pointed symbol in different fish, shellfish and shells. This is a symbol that honors life. It represents the dignity of the human spirit. Police officers, the American flag, you'll see the pentagram, five-pointed star symbol, many places, and it is the symbol of positive Wicca. In some circles, if the pentacle is inverted with the 2 points up, it looks like the head of a beast, and that sometimes means black magic, devil worship, although not always, because it can represent a reversal of power in a different way. So one has to be a little bit careful not to jump to conclusions. But generally, the role of the witch is to honor the changes of the season, the yearly rising of buds and falling of leaves, honor life, healing.
There's so much we could talk about, but unfortunately we're going to have to stop here. How can people get in touch with you? Because we're talking about Halloween, but this is actually 365 days a year as a professional. Quickly, how can people find out how to get in
my
touch with you?
website, which if you just put in Sky Maiden Musings, people should be able to reach me, or my phone number, 407-895-1522. I'm going to have a dumb supper, a silent supper seance, which is done all in black and quietly. And then I'm thinking of a Christmas tree seance before long, and more ghost tours. If anyone would be interested or have any questions, I would just be delighted to hear from your viewers.
Well, thank you so much, Dickie Jo Mullen, for allowing us to come into your beautiful home, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. It was a delight.